Well, hello everybody, and thanks for joining us in this webinar. Um, my name is Mike Packer, and I'm here with my colleagues Lacey Giles and Justin Polk, who you will meet here in a second. And we're talking today about um, navigating the AME landscape to prepare students for tomorrow's creative careers. So we're going to be discussing work-based learning, teaching artists, and curriculum content for arts, media, and entertainment education. And this is going to be perfect for educators, teachers, administrators, and district employees who want to increase their arts, media, and entertainment education offerings for students on their campus. Our mission. So Study Smart's mission is to collaborate with partners that promote educational equity, access, and success by providing a diverse range, of tools for students, families, and educators. I am one of those partnerships. My company is called Inspire EDU, and I work very closely with Study Smart to provide the arts, media, and entertainment curriculum, work-based learning, and teaching artists. A little bit about my background. I've been in education for about 35 years now, primarily in music education. I'm also a practitioner. I'm a drummer and an author, have a lot of curriculum books out on the market, and have a lot of experience, particularly in higher education administration. And am thrilled to be focusing now on developing this portfolio of offerings for K through 12 students. Next, we have with us Lacey Giles, and I will turn it over to her so that she may introduce herself and talk about her background.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Lacey, and I am currently the Director of Education for Digital Media Academy. And we have a curriculum partnership represented here. I'll talk today a little bit about some of the curricular choices in the courses that we're going to see. My background is in chemistry, physics, and biology education as a high school teacher for about 10 years, both in the US and in international schools. I have a multivalent academic background. I looked at the history of science and a lot at science education reform as well in my career. I then went into curriculum design, was a curriculum director, and working with educators and curriculum designers at DMA. And I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Lacey. So happy to have you with us. Excited to talk about our partnership. And we also have with us Justin Polk, who's Partnership Manager for Study Smart Tutors. Justin, you want to introduce yourself and talk about your background?
Sure thing, Mike. Hey, everybody. I'm Justin Polk, former music teacher. My background is in the band world. So I was a big marching band, symphonic band student coming up in Detroit. Went on to attend college at Southern University in Louisiana. And after graduating, I moved to Los Angeles, where I was a high school teacher within LAUSD. COVID kind of shifted my career into the ed tech side of things. After working for a social media company and Spotify, I'm now the partnerships manager for Study Smart Tutors surrounding the arts, media, and entertainment spaces. So my passion now is basically finding tools for teachers to use in an impactful way and getting behind that and working on the partnerships that we have with our school partners. So happy to be here. If there's any questions surrounding how we can bring these to your campus or to your school district, Mike is going to share my email at the end of this. So thanks for watching.
Terrific. Thanks, Justin. Thanks for being here. All right, so just to set the table a little bit before we jump in, it's very informal, so just come as you are and expect everything to be an invitation. If you have any comments you'd like to throw in the chat, please do so, and we'll do our best to address them as we go. We'll also welcome new experiences. So who's in the room? We have administrators, we have teachers with us today who are here to primarily discuss arts, media, and entertainment education and how they can implement this into their programs, whether it's a brand new program or starting a new pathway for an already existing arts, media, and entertainment education offering. So welcome, everybody. So discussion question. What do your students think of when they think about careers in arts and media? And how do those courses in music, fashion, arts, and culture help enhance learning of other subjects? Lacey, I'd like to ask you, with a background in science and being a science teacher, I know you've had experience with art integration into some of your classes. How was that experience for you?
That experience was crucial for me, both as an educator myself in dealing with the material, and also in terms of putting the course, just as we'll focus on maybe chemistry and maybe wheelhouse for me to say. And the course, its material, those are one thing, but the context for the students, thinking about to some extent, we want to justify why we're asking our students to do what they're doing. And if we do that with a sort of one lane mentality, that's less effective. And we also limit the students. That means that we also only speak to part of a room. And we exclude students who don't have innate interest in what a sodium atom is. And I think that's wildly underserving as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that I understand why we break things into specialties so that we can develop our specialties and pass information down in a well curated way to students. But I also think that those divisions are quite false. For example, the first unit in a traditional chemistry class is about light, and so I taught about photography in that unit, and we can talk about wavelengths in the same unit that we talk about photography, and I think that we should be. I mean, we might not use that specific example, but all of these pieces of information fit together, and I think the best job of an educator is to create connections and better metacognition, better skill transfer for students. This also helps to demystify something that I think you'll talk about later, which is the connection between bringing on certain information and application to creative industries. Students tend to think those are precluded from them if for all kinds of reasons that get built into the education system. And I think that we have both opportunities and a duty to break those things down. I hope I answered your question there.
No, you did beautifully. And I'll refer back to a conversation that we had prior where you discussed, bringing in talking about chemistry makeup of paint and how then you can go into art and you can bring in culture and you can bring in so many other rich things to support that, which I think is really important.
Yeah, that conversation takes students. I mean, you only have limited time, I suppose, but that conversation for us, from my students, went, we're talking about that particular conversation is about mixability, about how things mix, and then different ways of mixing paint through time. That allows you to talk about different eras in art. This also allows you to talk about things like accessibility. A lot of the history of art is determined by who can afford what pigment, what paint, what fixer.
Mm-hmm.
And as those things change, we see changes in not only the production of art, but also the way that it is accessible, the way that it is received. Then there are ethics conversations about restoration, about changes in art. There are a myriad of ways of connecting. I mean, I work with DMA is pretty firmly in the STEAM and STEM world, but part of what I do is connect that to make sure that stays connected to the creative world. Because there are just an unending number of ways to do that.
Yeah. Oh, terrific. And Justin, I'll ask you, being a former music teacher, how did your students think about careers in the arts and media?
Yeah, so this is funny because this kind of relates to me as well. So it's twofold. It's me as a student and also what I encounter with my students. I always led with this quote, "You don't know what you don't know." So a lot of times students will think, oh, if I want to go into arts or music or media, that's something in front of the camera. I have to be a content creator, a
Right.
musician, a performer. But a lot of times the pre, the post, and the planning of these different, sectors are huge, and we usually don't know about it. So you can still be in the arts and media and entertainment field, just in a different capacity. You can be in marketing, you can be an agent, you can be, planning the careers for these people and the way that their content is delivered. So it's very enlightening for students when they realize, like, oh, I might not be the best singer in the world,
Hmm.
or I might not play an instrument, but I can still be uh, immersed in these different fields. So
Yep.
that's my.
Yep. I totally agree. Um, the arts, media, and entertainment career path is so broad, and that's one of the things that we need to really work on with career discovery and career exploration is to show them how truly broad that is. So terrific. Thank
Mhm.
you both for that. All right, turn and talk. What are some current AME work-based learning activities and which ones have been most effective? I think I'll jump in and talk about one of my most effective work-based learning uh, activities that we did at a previous school that I was at. We took a cohort of students to the NFL media complex, which is here in Inglewood, California, right by SoFi Stadium. And we were meeting with the head of music for the NFL. And when you think NFL, you don't really think music and music placement. You think football, which is what I think. But there's tons of opportunities for music placement because all their content has music behind it. So we took a tour of the entire facility, which is just a network, right? It's a media network. We actually got to participate in one of the shows being taped live. And then we had a discussion with the head of music about the halftime show for the Super Bowl and how they went about choosing the artist and the pre-planning of the show. Um, and I thought that was just fascinating, and it made a huge impact on our students. Um, Speaking to the fact that, just in that one building alone, think about how broad the career spectrum is. Everything from music supervision to camera operators to marketing to social. I mean, it's all under one roof. So that was something for me that was impactful, and I know for our students too. Did you want to say something, Justin?
Yeah, I have one from COVID, or from distance learning, I should say. I did a project with my students where it was a music appreciation class and they were learning production. We did a unit on jingles. So
Cool.
we looked at a bunch of like local companies and how they use like catchy jingles, McDonald's, ba da ba ba ba. First thing you hear makes
Right.
you think of associating a product or a brand with a sound or a song. And we not only learned about the different forms of the jingle, but we also partner with local businesses during that time to create a jingle for their business. So it could be like a mom and pop, uh, you know, food truck or anything like that. So it was
Hmm.
a connection between the real world and like, hey, this is a placement. This is something you can do, to help out a business. So I think that was a good connection between the real world and, something as small as a 30-second jingle.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Lacey, anything for you? I know that might be a little bit outside of your science background.
Yeah, it is. It is a little tricky to think of because most of the when I was taking students to science practitioner facilities, we did have the opportunity. I taught for a short while in LA, and I taught a physics class in which the relationship between physics and music is replete, and we focused a lot on that
Yep.
because I think it's incredibly universal. I mean, physics is universal, but it doesn't feel that way.
Hmm.
I think, even for people who have innate interest in it, I loved physics classes, and still, that it's not drawing everybody in. And that the the closest thing that I can think of is taking students to a recording studio, which was a
Oh yeah.
fortunate benefit of some parents who were associated with the school, and looking at the way that frequencies are jumped over for the Auditone effect. And these are freshmen in high school. These are 14, 15-year-old students, so you have to be quite careful to dial the information in for them, and particularly as the person who's running a physics class that has a music component, the relationship is replete, and so you have to pull a lot of simple things out of it. So I remember that being the moment that they got to see something that we discussed, that they learn about, employed in something that they could recognize from a song or from from music production in general, and to watch it really just toggled on and off on I think it was a Phonics console, but
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, well,
That's
that's
the
cool.
example that jumps to mind, but it's quite small compared to these sort of large integrations that you just talked about. But I think, given time, that class could have gone a lot of it as redirections, really.
Totally. And what a great opportunity to go to a recording studio.
Yeah, that's also just a
That's
great time.
always fun.
I mean, one of the things that we get to do is let students understand how they connect. Like Justin, you were saying, students are often people think that there has to be a front of camera, there has to be a relationship, or I have to be the creator of the art, the music, etc. And so many people connect with art, music, without being the people who produce them. And we have opportunities in education to show them different ways in which they can connect to these things, in which their connection can be explored and expressed without being the person who produces those things. So,
Absolutely.
Yep. Totally agree. Thank you both. So quickly, let's just talk about some of the research-based theories that Study Smart uses when creating content and programming, and this definitely aligns well with our partnerships as well with Digital Media Academy, who's with us today. The first is social cognitive career theory. So it's basically raising self-efficacy beliefs in our students and also raising positive outcome expectations. Another one that we use quite often is motivational theory of role modeling, and we feel that having role models influence students' education, um, provides inspiration, provides motivation, and reinforces goals. So that's very helpful. The next, speaking of goals, is Growth Mindset, which is a fantastic book. If you haven't read it, it's a fantastic book by Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford University. And that's all about the idea of seeing positivity and learning from failure, right? So that your mind is open to always growing, always learning, and any failure, you can always learn something from that to propel you to the next step in your career or whatever progression you're going through. And then lastly, culturally responsive teaching, CRT, which is embedding cultural references where we can, so that there's great connective tissue with the students and their communities and their world around them. It makes education much more relatable. So those are just a few that we use quite often. And then if we're talking about the belief gap, right? So students, might actually, what we were talking about earlier about the entertainment industry and understanding how broad that is. They might not understand that and think that they belong because they might not have direct evidence in their family. So they don't have anybody that they know that's in the entertainment industry. There might be a stereotype threat, which is true for many first-gen people of color from the media. And there's a large workforce development push to increase the number of BIPOC folks that are involved in the media, which is terrific, and we're supporting that. Negative self-talk, of course, negative talk from your surroundings, can be another one, and then not being able to see yourself represented in certain industries. And that's one where I really feel like we can help, because the more we bring industry into the classroom or bring students into the industry, we can see that our students can envision themselves in these roles that we're showing them. So I think that's really, really important. Some ideas to validate and encourage students' strengths and their bright future outlook. We can help students dream and ask them to write them down so that they can constantly see what their goals are and their dreams are. And then again, bringing guest speakers into the classroom to learn firsthand about, roles and responsibilities and career paths. I've always felt that it's really important for students to see where people come from and how they get into the careers that they get into, because career paths are not linear lines, right? They take a lot of twists and turns, and you really need to be open to those twists and turns and seeing how you can grow throughout them. So I think those are some ideas that we can use to implement to help close that belief gap. What are some activities we can implement to close the belief gap, and what are the biggest challenges? I'll put that to both Lacey and Justin. Anything you guys can come up with?
Yeah, for me, my mind, I know you're going to touch on this later, but another quote, I'm full of quotes. They always pop in my head. But one that stuck with me is you can't be what you can't see. And, sure as, the student that might live in LA and may have more exposure to the industry, it's in their backyard. But let's say you're a kid in, the Midwest and, your surrounding isn't reflective of where you envision yourself going. It's hard to see yourself in that capacity if it's not tangible or around you. So I think a huge thing, and this is kind of like I feel like not talked about enough, but when you do field trips or job shadowing around those different places, I think that's the first window of entry or opportunity or even enlightenment for students to see things that they wouldn't be able to see in person. So that's why I love work-based learning and exposure, job shadowing, things like that.
Yeah, great point. And I would add to that that now with the technology that we have, Zoom and all of that stuff, so much of this can be done virtually. So it really creates a lot more access for people not having to be you know, in an urban setting where the entertainment industry is. I think that helps tremendously too. Lacey, how about you?
Yeah. Um, I agree with everything you're saying, Justin. I was glad to to hear you say you can't be what you can't see, because that's something that's, relevant in my own life and is something that I've spoken to students about a lot. I think that this belief gap exists based on who's precluded from believing that they can be part of all kinds of things. It's particularly virulent in AME, I think. I think, a very important thing that educators can do is to be sure that you lead by sort of attitude example, which dismisses those immediate a priori ideas that, like, oh, this is hard, and by this myth of exceptionalism that, like, only the most incredibly talented singer can be in the music industry, only the most incredibly talented painter can be in the arts industry, but rather that just treats the reality of these things as huge sections of society that require all kinds of participation, and your interest can take you toward that participation as well. That for educators requires a lot of checking themselves, a lot of understanding how they may have internalized those understandings as well. I think a lot of people fall into that exceptionalism myth often. I think that that's one thing. And also, as Justin said, any situation that you can set up where students can see themselves, even if it's sort of, a field trip doesn't always give them the opportunity to participate, but just having been in the space matters so much more than you think. Having seen it as a real thing Because
Right.
if they think they want to be in one of these industries, they can already abstract the idea of their dream, but it's the connection between those abstractions and their lived reality that day, that I think we can provide to them. And then also just, I think teachers and I mean, all people in all positions that have any power have an opportunity to demystify for the
Hmm.
people around them. You know, I remember not even, I'm a first generation university student, and I remember going to university and just having, I didn't know that I didn't know this, to
Hmm.
come back to another Justin quote.
Yep.
But I didn't even know the questions to ask. I didn't know where I was going wrong because I didn't know how to conceptualize what the right pathway was, and then how to ask how to get on it. I happen to love study, so that helped a lot, but we shouldn't have to have some exceptional connection to a thing or a process to be able to achieve that. And so I think that as a teacher, I have always tried to make this is something that sort of, there are no stupid questions, there are no questions too simple, and to make sure that I'm trying to fill in the gaps of information where students don't know that they have a question. If that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah. Terrific. Thank you. All right. Then we also have the network gap. So that's limited social capital or insider information. So ideas to close the network gap could be to encourage attendance on free online webinars by professional associations, industry insiders, or subject matter experts. Certainly with social media, websites, and LinkedIn now, you could definitely find a lot of subject matter experts and associations. Musically, one that comes to mind is NAMM. That's a big association for us. There's also ASCAP and BMI and CSAC and the Grammys, and it goes on and on and on. But they're all having networking events. So there are plenty of places for students to go, even online, to access that. For older students, 18 and over, encouraging them to do meetups or LinkedIn groups for networking opportunities, and then encouraging reaching out to people for informational interviews on LinkedIn. And I think that's something that is really important. And I think more often than not, anybody who gets asked to do a 30-minute chat with somebody aspiring to be in that industry or in that role, they would be happy to give back and to share their perspective on it. So I think those are all really three great ideas. What virtual and in-person work-based learning have we offered or could we offer? What's been effective? I think we've already shared about this, so we'll go ahead and move on. Um, Now we're going to talk about some of our products and services that we have through Study Smart and through our partnerships with Inspire EDU and with Digital Media Academy. First, you've heard us talk a lot about work-based learning. So this is a flow chart that kind of illustrates what it is, the three pillars that it touches upon, and then some of the activities that can support those pillars. So the first step is the career discovery and awareness phase. And so you can offer master classes or clinics or guest speakers into the classroom. You can also offer worksite tours where students can see, physically be in the building and physically see where this work gets done, and also talk to employees and have um, panels, career panels, talking about their career exploration and their career paths. Then it would go to learning and skills training. So obviously that's curriculum based, whether it's credential based or full CTE curriculum that leads to credential. Um, Definitely a lot of curriculum support there. And then next would be industry engagement. So we see this as mentoring or going in and having industry folks judging contests or assessing student work. Um, Those are all three really important touch points that are very helpful and impactful for students. And then the final pillar is internships and job shadowing and potentially post-secondary or industry placement. So internships obviously kind of speak for themselves. We can do them virtually or you can do them in person. And then job shadowing, spending time with employees at a specific office or a specific company, learning what their roles and responsibilities are and learning what a day in the life is. And that can also kind of toggle in the career discovery and awareness pillar as well. And then all of this leading to entry-level career placement and or apprenticeship placement or post-secondary studies. So students might want to pursue a degree or they might want to go right into the industry. So this sets them up for either. These are some of our work-based learning partners. So we have Spotify, JBL by Harman, Dante, Universal Music Group, Canon, and the Recording Academy, which is the Grammys. There are several others, but this is just highlighting some of our partners. We also supply teaching artists, and having the industry expertise in the classroom, I think, just brings such a wealth of real-world experience and creativity to the classroom. They can, provide really industry-informed and relatable information to the students, really the information that students need to know to be successful in the industry right now. So obviously we can provide that face-to-face or virtually as well. Now we get to our courses, and our partnership with DMA, Digital Media Academy, is chief among them. And I'll go ahead and have Lacey speak a little bit about Digital Media Academy, what they do, and our partnership, and then some courses that we have partnered on.
Thanks very much. I'll be brief here in this introduction of DMA's Digital Media Academy, so that we can get to the courses themselves. But Digital Media Academy began, its inception was in 1999 as a research project at Stanford called, I think, the Academy for New Media, that looked at the integration of digital learning methods into the classroom. And in the ensuing 20-ish years, we have taken multiple forms, and those have always centered around STEM and STEAM education and its implementation, development, and proliferation. So that has sometimes, we have a great deal of curriculum, which is what hinges our partnership that we're discussing today. And we've also done a number of student experiences, always trying to stay connected to how we can make sure that STEM and STEAM implementation is going smoothly for educators so that they can have access to new and good methods and curriculum as they try to advance their institutions and their students.
Terrific. Sorry. So some of the activities that are included in the curriculum, definitely group and individual work. Lots of discussion opportunities, knowledge checks, of course, and assessments. The curriculum is very project-based, so a lot of project-based assessments as well. A lot of interactive videos, and then the work-based learning is not embedded so much in the curriculum. We believe that it's supplemental, but there should be a lot of connective tissue between the work-based learning activities and the curriculum and where you're marrying the two of them. So we wanted to include that here as well. These courses can be experienced either in person or virtually, or hybrid in a flipped classroom model. They can be instructor-led or they can be self-guided, and they're available on desktops, laptops, tablets, and smartphones. So now let's get to our graphic design 1, 2, and 3. These are 3 courses that are designed for CTE 100-hour curriculum pathways. So I'll go ahead and let Lacey talk us through what's included in these courses.
Great. I'm just going to give sort of a top-level summary of what these courses go through, and a little bit how we sort of why we've made those choices, or hopefully that'll be reinforced in the going through of them. And just to say, we're always happy to have a long-time educator develop a course, but we also really love to have industry experts develop courses as well. And in some of the courses that we're going to discuss today, we've been fortunate enough to have people with a great deal of industry experience with these courses contribute to their development. We're a lot of educators in-house, so we can always make sure that the pedagogy is sound, but there's something irreplaceable about an industry expert, someone with a lot of experience putting their hand to a course. Okay, so course sequence begins with something called Graphic Designer Studio, which is sort of the intro level course that begins with the foundation. I'm actually going to back up for one moment and say that each of these sequences, this one and the next that we will look at, are designed to spiral through important curricular content, increasing the depth of engagement and the complexity of technical skill and engagement as you go through the sequence. So you will see that that will be borne out in both sequences. So we want to revisit similar application scenarios and principles, but see students understand the transferability of both skill and thought process. Okay, so Graphic Designer Studio starts with this base in color theory and semiotics, looking at symbols and slogans, and then major design elements, text, graphics, space and spacing, and then begins with the project component, which takes up really the great majority of the class, multiple projects that ask the students to think about, employ, manipulate these ideas by arranging them, by making very deliberate design decisions. As students are moving through these projects, the idea of audience understanding and audience empathy is introduced, so that they're doing the sort of skill practice and the cognition about all of the things like color theory and semiotics that we talked about, and also the metacognition of thinking about their audiences. And the projects ask the students to use these skills in iteration. The next course is Graphic Design with Photoshop and Illustrator, which instills the fundamentals of working with those programs, and then cycles again through color theory and I don't think they're using the term semiotics, but that's the biggest umbrella, in more depth and using more sophisticated tools and thinking, right? So we see that step in depth on both fronts. And it moves on to more complex design projects using that as the crucial site of learning. There's a little bit more front loading in Graphic Designer Studio because it's the intro course. Graphic Design with Photoshop and Illustrator takes a step further to make the most dominant site of learning projects. And then lastly, we have Design Thinking with Figma, which this course encourages students to consider the fundamentals of design by breaking complex visual information down into its constituent parts. This calls on the understanding that they've developed, sort of content understanding that they've developed in the previous two courses. And then students use Figma to explore these fundamentals, exposing them to another technical component, to Figma itself. This both allows them a greater skill set, obviously, but more importantly, teaches the kind of skill transfer that we understand is so necessary, and that I think it's important for students to understand when they're looking at these industry positions. It's, how do we think and how do we apply that? We can learn multiple technical skills to support that. And it's just, this course gives them an opportunity to ask, how can I manipulate these design elements with a new system, with different tools, with different goals? So that's just a broad swipe at what we're looking at here for the graphic design suite. I tried to be brief. I hope that will be okay.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. It was a perfect overview. Thank you. And now we'll go to the film production 1, 2, and 3 courses. And again, I'll have Lacey kind of give a 1,000-foot level view of everything that's included here in these 3 courses.
Okay, so this course sequence begins with creative storytelling with Pixman and Celtex. And it begins with establishing cinema as storytelling, something that you might think that you take for granted, but actually needs some context and introduction, particularly for students. And then it oscillates between equipping some more fundamentals of cinema as storytelling and also some wide scope historical context for moving pictures as a medium. Students then begin to think of how to tell their stories. So we introduce different storytelling and different methods, so narrative fiction, documentary, etc. And students at this point, when they have kind of a broad context and an idea of how storytelling might occur, they begin to conceptualize a full film project for themselves, thinking of it from a storytelling perspective first. As students develop this story, the course takes them through the basics of making a story appealing and compelling. This dives a little bit into the psychology of storytelling and in particular considers how advertising uses this. It's such an interesting site for students to understand short storytelling, because advertising is so often this without us thinking about it being storytelling. And that heuristic, that shortening, really allows them, as we were talking about, Mike, it lets them reference things that they know in their day-to-day lives and understand them differently. And then that abstraction also allows them to think about their projects, taking a larger story and compacting it down more easily. Those examples really help them.
Yep.
From there, students investigate the universality of storytelling by considering fables, folk tales, fairy tales. So what makes something universal? What makes it unique? How do we see these same universal principles adapted across medium, across time, across culture? And then students spend the remainder of the time crafting their project, crafting their film project, taking a first pass, because this is the first course, at the technical project by looking at cinematography, sound, and editing, of course, using these two programs. The next course, film and video production with Adobe Premiere Pro, will cycle through a number of these things again and pushes a little bit further down the technical pathway. So in keeping with our desire to spiral through curriculum, it increases in detail. But this course also deals with filmmaking fundamentals and storytelling basics. But in addition, students delve deeper into the technical aspects of Adobe Premiere Pro, and they take a more technical and applied approach to the storytelling component as well. They storyboard for the first time. They're asked to very carefully consider hero versus villain, hero's journey, greater explanation of an engagement with conflict, and asks also, and importantly, how can the greater technical capacities of Premiere Pro and more camera techniques that I know now from this course help explore these storytelling elements? So constantly pushing those two things at the same time. Students spend about a third of this course on their project and learn more organization skills, which I think provide a really, this is a great place for looking at industry application, because they will do a pre-production planning, a project planning, and a post-production planning. So there's industry application right the way through, of course, because all these tools are used and usable, but that specific thing that is thinking about pre-pro and thinking about post-pro is there are some great conversations to be had there. And then how to ready a project for distribution. However, I don't mean that in an industry way. I mean that in terms of packaging something that they can keep as a portfolio and then disseminate well. And then lastly, advanced film and visual effects with After Effects and Premiere Pro similarly focuses on both technical skills and storytelling, but continues to take them a step further. And this time we isolate the visual storytelling. So of course, it trains students on the use of After Effects and pushes their knowledge of Premiere Pro a step further. And it also asks students to go through the process of designing and executing a project, just as the previous course does, but it asks important questions of the role of visual effects in storytelling. It does this by spending about a whole unit on silent film. So if we take away one component of storytelling and focus on another, as well as give you more tools, give you more visual effects tools, what can you do with that? How can you engage with the elements that we've discussed already, that you've used already? So it isolates the visual component in that way while giving students another visual turn. I taught at a film camp early in my teaching career. We always did fully silent film. Cool. And students at the beginning are always skeptical of that because of their experience in cinema. But very quickly they take to it and understand the value of that isolation, which I think is really really an interesting thing, and it makes them appreciate sound design so much more the next time that they see
Totally.
another film. Students also spend a large part of this course creating and executing a film project, and as with the prior course, they end it with a film to show for their work, so they have a portfolio developed as well.
Yeah.
And that, I think I could talk a lot more, but I'm going to stop and hand it back.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lacey. And I will also add for both the graphic design and the film production in the software packages that they're using, where they're provided, these courses are leading toward preparing students to be ready to take credentialing testing. So for Photoshop and Illustrator, Premiere Pro, things like that, this will prepare them for credentialing as well. Awesome. So now we'll go to just a couple or a few of our other partner courses. And these are not meant to be full CTE courses. These are meant to be more supplemental, 20 to 30 hour courses that you can either use for, supplemental into curriculum that you already have, or for shorter units and things like that. So we have music production with 1500 Sound Academy, where students will learn general music production concepts. They'll learn about genre, sound, and tempo, and they'll learn some about music theory. They'll also be working on a digital audio workstation, which in this is Soundtrap. And Soundtrap is a wonderful tool that actually students can create a lot of incredible work on, but it will also then set them up to move to other industry standard platforms such as Ableton or Logic Pro.
Study Smart
A little
tutors and
video
NAC
on
are
that
excited to present our
behind
students.
that for time's sake. Content creation for career development with Adam W. This one's a really cool class. It's meant to be 10 to 12 hours worth of material, and it's really about content creation for social media. So here are some of the topics that it covers. Why create social media content in the first place, knowing the platforms, how to generate ideas and create social media projects, creating video projects, posting those videos, and then putting it all together. It's a really fun supplemental course that we offer. Another one is Lego engineering. This would be the one that I'd want to take because I played with Legos a ton when I was a kid. Lego engineering course can be anywhere from 6 to 20 hours, so it's very customizable. And students, with Legos, they'll go on and they'll design and build and experiment to create engineering structures like elevators and cranes and aqueducts. And then they're put through workshops and challenges to make sure that their designs are structurally sturdy and pass the test. Here's another one, exploring data analytics through esports. So in this course, students are interpreting data, they're representing data, they're looking for patterns of association and probability. So students use a variety of statistical techniques to analyze real-time gaming data from esports professionals and players, which is really cool. The next one, which is one of our more popular courses, is Sneaker Essentials, so this is cool. It's all about sneaker design and the sneaker industry. So students learn how to design and design concepts and techniques. They also learn about sales and distribution, and then sneaker media, which is its own culture. So they're learning from industry experts in all of these different areas, and we had partnered with an education provider called Yellow Brick to present this course. It's really a fun course. Next, we have exploring the impact of African culture on fashion, music, and science. This is really a fascinating course that delves into Africa, and it's an introduction into the culture of the country, its influences of fashion and art and music and science, which is, it's really a fascinating course, and I recommend it highly. If you want to check out any of these courses, you're welcome to have a demo of our LMS. And here are the credentials for you to access it. So you just click on you follow this URL, click on a course, click get access, and then use your password there. And you're able to view any of these. Our LMS is UDIP approved, and these are some of the data and engagement points that we have. There are pre and post course surveys, and there are several project activities as we talked about before. There's plenty of assessment and knowledge checks, and the knowledge checks include drag and drop, multiple choice, fill in the blanks, and true and false. And then there's several reporting opportunities, one-click data generation. It's fully single sign-on, and we're on Clever. As far as the reporting goes, we have grades and reports through our grader report. It shows quiz grades. It shows pre and post course survey reports, activity completion reports, and an activity login report. We'll go ahead and pass this one. And then lastly, our implementation of programming. I think the one thing that I'd like to get across here is that it's very customizable to your school or your district's needs. So the number of hours, the class length, the implementation model can all be customized to fit whatever needs you may have. We have virtual and in-person programming available, and virtual in-person and in-person work-based learning activities available. Also with teaching artists available as well. And as I said before, it's a data-driven approach, pre and post course surveys and assessments, and attendance tracking and reporting. So with that, we'll go ahead and close, and I'll say if you have any questions or are interested in any of the courses that you saw here or the work-based learning or teaching artists, feel free to email Justin. His email is down here at jpolk@studysmarttutors.com, and he'll get back with you right away. Also, this webinar is being recorded, so we're happy to share it with you if you'd like to review any of it. And Lacey, I want to thank you so much for being with us. It was wonderful having you in the conversation, and really and grateful for the explanation that you gave on the graphic design and the film production courses.
Wonderful. Thanks very much for having me, Mike. It's a pleasure to
course.
be here, talk about the courses and a little bit about our common goals.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And thank you, everybody.